My name is Andrew. I am 64 years old. This story still gives me goosebumps. Let's begin. I arrived at the venue earlier than most of the guests. My suit felt stiff, my hands clammy, though it wasn't the August heat that made them sweat. It was the unease of being summoned to my only daughter's wedding after 3 years of silence. 3 years of unanswered calls, unopened letters, and ignored birthdays. Still, when the invitation finally came, I convinced myself it was her way of extending an olive branch. The driveway curved through rows of manicured hedges, the kind of place that must have cost a small fortune to rent. I remember thinking she'd gotten everything she wanted: wealth, respectability, status, though none of it had come from me. I parked my car and stepped out, the gravel crunching beneath my shoes, and that's when I saw it. Right at the entrance of the reception hall, on a wooden easel draped in lace, hung a photograph of me. My own face staring back at me from a picture taken 10 years ago at some family barbecue. Underneath, in bold black letters, was a caption that made my knees buckle. No entry. For a moment, I thought it had to be some cruel joke arranged by a stranger. But the handwriting, neat and deliberate, was hers. My daughter's. A pair of waiters stood nearby, one of them smirking as if waiting to see what I'd do. Guests walked past, whispering, their eyes darting from the sign to me and back again. I heard one man murmur, "Is that him?" as though I were some criminal whose picture had been posted for warning. I clenched my jaw and walked closer, needing to touch the frame just to prove it was real. The glass was cool beneath my fingertips, but my blood boiled hot. 25 years of raising her, paying for her education, walking her through every scraped knee and every heartbreak, and this was how she introduced me to her new life. Not as a father, not as family, but as an unwanted guest. The worst part? My ex-wife stood a few steps away, watching. She didn't look surprised. In fact, she looked almost satisfied. As though she had known all along this was coming and had quietly approved it. I stood frozen there for several minutes, the laughter of wedding guests spilling out from the open doors ahead. They toasted with champagne while I remained outside, branded like an intruder. But here's the thing, and you'd better listen carefully: betrayal like that doesn't break a man. No. It carves something new into him, something sharper, something colder. That moment at the entrance wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. And my daughter had no idea what was coming. I don't know how long I stood there staring at that damn sign. Long enough for my throat to go dry, long enough for the embarrassment to soak into my skin until I felt like everyone could smell it on me. But after the first shock burned away, I steadied myself. I wasn't going to give her, or anyone else, the satisfaction of watching me shuffle off like some pitiful old fool. I straightened my tie, wiped the sweat from my forehead, and walked past the easel as if the words weren't meant for me. The young man at the door, a kid in a rented tux, probably paid to play gatekeeper, shifted awkwardly in my way. "Excuse me, sir," he began, his hand hovering like he might actually try to stop me. "You lay one finger on me, boy," I told him, calm but cold, "and you'll be picking your teeth up off this marble floor." He must have read the truth in my eyes because he stepped aside without another word. I walked into that hall. The place was shining. Golden chandeliers, polished floors, tables lined with white cloth and flowers that probably cost more than my first car. Laughter bounced off the walls, champagne fizzed in tall glasses, and the air reeked of money and pretense. My daughter had gotten exactly what she'd always wanted: an audience. Heads turned as I entered. Conversations died mid-sentence. People recognized me from the picture outside, the unwelcome father. It was like stepping onto a stage where the play had already cast me as the villain. Then I saw her. She stood across the room in her wedding gown, white and glittering under the lights. She was radiant, yes, I'll admit that. But when her eyes met mine, her face froze. Not with surprise. Not with shame. With anger. As if my presence was an offense against her perfect day. Beside her, the groom whispered something in her ear. She nodded, her jaw tight. Then she broke away from him and came striding toward me, heels clacking across the floor like gunshots. "Dad," she said through a stiff smile, voice low but sharp, "what are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" I repeated, loud enough that a few nearby guests flinched. "I was invited." "Or have you forgotten that, too?" Her smile never wavered, but her eyes told the truth, cold, unforgiving. "I thought you'd understand the sign." "The sign?" I spat. "The one where you hung my photo like a wanted criminal? That's what you call understanding?" Around us, guests tried to pretend they weren't listening, but they were. Forks hovered above plates. Glasses stayed halfway to lips. A hush spread, thick as smoke. "You weren't supposed to come inside," she hissed, her teeth clenched. "This day isn't about you." "And yet, somehow, here we are," I said. I don't know what she saw in my face right then, but her smile faltered for the first time. Maybe she realized the old man she thought she could humiliate wasn't going to slink away quietly. Maybe she remembered the father who used to carry her on his shoulders through county fairs, the one who worked himself raw to put her through school. Or maybe she just saw the beginning of a storm she hadn't prepared for. Because in that moment, standing in the hall of her perfect wedding, I made a decision: I wouldn't be leaving. Not until every guest in that room knew exactly what kind of daughter she truly was. I didn't sit down. I didn't even look for a seat. I just stood there, at the edge of the dance floor, hands folded behind my back like a soldier waiting for orders. My daughter tried to rush me out, whispering that we'd talk later, but I held my ground. The groom tugged gently at her arm, whispering something to calm her, probably telling her not to make a scene. A scene. They didn't want a scene. That was exactly what they were about to get. The band shifted into some soft tune, guests clinked glasses, and waiters carried trays of champagne. It was time for the toasts. The groom's father went first, droning on about love and legacy, family and blessings. Everyone clapped politely. Then the maid of honor raised her glass, telling stories of childhood adventures, making everyone laugh. And then, without anyone calling on me, I stepped forward and picked up a glass of champagne from the nearest tray. My voice cut through the room. "I'd like to say a few words," I said. Every head turned. My daughter's face drained of color. The groom half rose from his chair as if to stop me, but his own guests, curious now, urged him to sit back down. The room had gone too quiet. No one was going to turn away from what was about to unfold. I held the glass steady, not a tremor in my hand. For those of you who don't know me, though I imagine many of you have already been told some version of the story, I am the father of the bride. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I continued. I raised this girl with every ounce of strength I had. Worked double shifts so she could have piano lessons, scraped by so she could wear the dresses she wanted, carried her on my back when she was too tired to walk. And yet, I paused, letting the silence settle heavy. And yet, today, at the very entrance to this hall, she posted my photograph with the words, "No entry." Gasps broke the hush. Guests twisted in their seats, some whispering, some staring straight at her. My daughter's eyes blazed, her lips tight, but she couldn't move, not with every soul in that room watching. I lowered the glass. She wanted to humiliate me. And she succeeded, for a moment. But humiliation has a way of turning into something else. Something colder. Something sharper. And today, on her wedding day, I want you all to see not just the white dress and the flowers, but the kind of woman she has chosen to become. The room fractured, whispers rising, heads shaking, forks clattering against china. The groom's mother shot up, hissing at me to stop. The groom himself looked torn between loyalty to his bride and the growing shadow of doubt flickering across his face. And my daughter trembled. Not with shame, not with guilt, but with fury. She hissed through clenched teeth, "You've ruined everything. I leaned close enough for only her to hear. No, I said. I've only just begun. After my little toast, the room split in two. Half the guests couldn't meet my eyes, half stared openly, hungry for more scandal than the overpriced catering had promised them. The band had fallen silent, bowstrings frozen mid-air, and the groom's father barked at them to keep playing, for God's sake. But no one moved. Everyone wanted to hear the rest. That was when I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded sheaf of papers. Not a speech. Not vows. Records. I laid them on the head table, right in front of the cake, 3 tiers of fondant and sugar flowers that probably cost more than my yearly grocery bills. The room leaned in as I spread the papers open, each one stamped with official lettering. Receipts. Bank transfers. Loan agreements. Tuition bills. Do you know what these are? I asked the crowd. My daughter shook her head in frantic warning, eyes wide. These are the debts I took on for her. $42,000 for college. $25,000 for a wedding dress that wasn't this one, mind you, but the first one, when she said she'd marry a boy who left her 2 months later. $15,000 for her first apartment when she couldn't pay rent. Gasps again, louder now. Heads whipped toward her. She tried to interrupt, Dad, stop, but I raised my voice over hers. And not once, did she ever pay a dime back. Not once did she thank me without wanting more the next month. And today, she repays all that with a photograph at the door telling me I am not welcome. The groom shifted uncomfortably. He hadn't known, I could see it in his face. His family's whispers turned sharp, cutting through the silence. Aunts and uncles frowned, guests exchanged shocked looks. What had been a fairy tale wedding was now a courtroom, and she was on trial. My daughter slammed her hands on the table, rattling the champagne flutes. This is my wedding. You're pathetic, dredging up old bills like some bitter accountant. I never asked you to do those things. Oh, but you did, I shot back. Every tear you shed, every phone call late at night, don't pretend you didn't know what you were asking for. You built this day on my back, and now you want me erased from it. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the chandelier lights humming. And then, slowly, deliberately, I gathered the papers back into a neat stack, slid them into my jacket, and smiled. Don't worry, I said, my voice steady. I don't plan to ruin your marriage today. Relief flickered across her face, too soon. I leaned closer, just enough for her to hear, but the front rows could catch every word. I plan to ruin it tomorrow. The groom paled. Guests erupted into chatter. My daughter's nails dug into the tablecloth as if to keep herself standing. And me? I finished my champagne, set the empty glass down beside the cake, and walked out of that hall with every eye fixed on my back. I didn't go home after leaving the hall. No, I drove straight to the little diner on 3rd Street, the one that stays open past midnight, where the coffee tastes like tar but the booths are private enough for scheming. I slid into the corner seat, ordered a black coffee I barely touched, and pulled out my phone. The first call I made wasn't to her, it was to the groom. He answered on the second ring, his voice uncertain. Hello. It's me, I said. Her father. There was a pause. Then, cautiously, why are you calling me? I let a thin smile creep into my tone. Because I think you deserve to know who you married today. Another pause, longer this time. I could hear the noise of the reception still roaring in the background, music forced louder to cover whispers, laughter strained to patch the cracks I'd torn open. I'm not interested in, he began, but I cut him off. Yes, you are. You should be. Because the woman you just tied yourself to has built a mountain of debts on my shoulders, debts she's never paid, debts she's hidden from you. Do you know how much her education cost? How many times she came begging for rent? Do you know she once swore she'd never marry anyone who couldn't give her a bigger ring than her last fiancé? She said it in my kitchen, right after I handed her the money for that very ring. Silence. Dead silence. "Why are you telling me this?" he finally asked. "Because," I said, lowering my voice, "I want you to think about something tonight, when you take her hand and call her your wife. I want you to ask yourself, if she could discard her own father like garbage, how long before she does the same to you?" I didn't wait for his answer. I hung up. And then I made the second call. Not to her. Not to him. But to the one person I knew could take a rumor and stretch it like wildfire through every guest who'd attended, her cousin, Emily. The talker. The one who'd been left off the bridesmaids list and nursed a grudge sharp enough to cut glass. By morning, every guest at that wedding would know more than they'd ever wanted to about the bride. The perfect daughter, the glowing wife, exposed for exactly what she was. I leaned back in that diner booth, finally sipping my cold coffee, and I'll tell you something, boy, it tasted sweet. Because revenge doesn't always come with fire and fury. Sometimes it's quieter. A seed of doubt, planted in the right soil, watered with just enough truth, will grow into a forest that chokes out everything else. And I had just planted mine. I woke up the next day to a silence so heavy it almost rang in my ears. No phone calls, no knocks on the door, no apologies waiting on my voicemail. I brewed my coffee slow, taking my time, because I knew it wouldn't stay quiet for long. By 9 o'clock, it started. First came a text from Emily, the cousin I'd lit the fuse with. "Uncle, you wouldn't believe the messages flying around this morning. Half the bridal party is furious. Groom's parents want answers. She's trying to do damage control, but it's everywhere. Everywhere." That word sat on my tongue like honey. By 10, I got another text, from a number I didn't recognize. Just 4 words, "What have you done?" No name, but I didn't need one. It was my daughter. She hadn't dared call. By noon, the first call came, not from her, but from the groom himself. His voice was tight, clipped, as though he'd been pacing for hours. "Mr. Miller," he began, "I want to hear it straight from you. Did you really cover her debts? The college, the apartments, the rings? All of it?" I leaned back in my chair, looking out the window at the street, calm as a man watering his lawn. "Every dollar. I've got the receipts. You saw a few last night. I can show you the rest." He went quiet for so long I thought the line had dropped. Then, finally, she said, "You're exaggerating. That you're bitter. That none of this matters anymore." I chuckled. "Of course she did. But you're a smart man. Think about this, if she lied about owing me, what else might she be lying about?" That did it. I could hear it in his breathing, the doubt, the kind that gnaws at a man in the dark hours before dawn. He muttered something about needing to go and hung up. By 2 o'clock, Emily texted again, "She's losing it." Shouting at him in the lobby of the hotel. Guests overheard. People already calling it the shortest honeymoon in town history. I sat back, folded my hands over my stomach, and closed my eyes. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the old fool left outside the door. No, I was the one holding the door now, and deciding who stayed in and who stayed out. The best revenge, boy, isn't a single strike. It's watching someone trip over the truth you've laid at their feet, again and again, until they can't stand anymore. And believe me, she was just starting to stumble. It was dusk when I heard it. A pounding, angry, desperate, on my front door. Not a polite knock, not the kind of tap a daughter uses when she comes home for Sunday dinner. No, this was the kind that rattles the glass panes, the kind that says, "I'm not asking to come in, I'm demanding it." I opened the door slow, steady. And there she was. Her wedding dress was gone, replaced by a wrinkled blouse and smeared makeup. The shine of yesterday had burned off, leaving only rage. Her hair was pulled back messily, as if she hadn't slept, and her eyes were swollen, whether from tears or fury, I couldn't tell. You, she spat, jabbing her finger at my chest before I'd even said a word. You've ruined everything. I stepped aside and let her storm into the living room. She didn't wait for an invitation. She never did. She paced across the carpet, her heels stabbing the floor, her hands shaking as she threw words like knives. Do you have any idea what you've done? People are talking. His family is threatening to annul the marriage. My husband, won't even look at me. Do you feel proud of yourself? Does destroying your daughter's life make you happy? I let her rant. I stood there, calm as still water, until her voice broke, until she had to stop for breath. Then I said it. You destroyed it yourself. I just turned on the lights so everyone could see. Her face twisted, caught between fury and something else, something closer to fear. She opened her mouth to fire back, but nothing came. Just silence. I reached into the drawer of the old oak cabinet by my chair and pulled out the folder, the one with every receipt, every bank transfer, every record I'd kept like a ledger of betrayal. I placed it on the coffee table between us and tapped it once with my finger. Here, I said. Proof. The truth you've tried to bury for years. You can scream at me all you want, but you can't scream this away. Not anymore. She stared at the folder like it was a coiled snake, her hands twitching but never reaching for it. For the first time in a long time, she looked smaller. Like the girl I used to carry on my shoulders, the girl who thought I could fix anything. Only now, she knew I wasn't here to fix her. I hate you, she whispered finally, her voice cracking. No, I said, my voice low but steady. You hate yourself. And you should. Because now he sees you for what you are. And you'll never be able to hide it again. She backed away then, her bravado crumbling, until she was at the door. She hesitated for just a moment, her eyes meeting mine, searching for the father she used to know. But that man was gone. She'd killed him herself, years ago. The door slammed, and I was left in the quiet. The folder still sat on the table, untouched. But I knew, oh, I knew, she wouldn't be able to leave it there. Not her. Not yet. 2 nights passed after her outburst. I half expected her to come back, maybe begging, maybe threatening. But it wasn't her who showed up. It was him. The knock was softer this time, hesitant. When I opened the door, he stood there in a pressed shirt and tie, still dressed like the respectable man he wanted to be. But his eyes gave him away, red-rimmed, sleepless, filled with the weight of questions no groom should be carrying 3 days after a wedding. Can I come in? He asked. His voice was low, stripped of the arrogance he'd worn at the reception. I stepped aside. He walked in slowly, looking around my house like he was searching for ghosts. We sat across from each other at the dining table, the same table where my daughter had eaten her birthday cakes, where she'd blown out candles and made wishes that I used to believe included me. He folded his hands, leaned forward, and spoke. I need the truth. All of it. Every dollar, every story. If she lied to me before we married, I need to know now before it's too late. I didn't rush. I let him sit in his silence for a moment, let him feel the weight of what he'd asked. Then I pulled the folder from the cabinet, the same one I'd shown her, and laid it on the table between us. These are the records, I said. Not opinions, not bitterness. Records. Read them. He flipped through them, his eyes scanning faster and faster. The color drained from his face with each page, tuition payments, loan balances, emergency transfers. Dates, amounts, signatures. She told me her scholarship covered almost everything, he muttered, voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head. I worked weekends and nights to make up the gaps. She knew it. She cried for it. Then she turned her back the moment she thought I had nothing left to give. He closed the folder slowly, his hands trembling. For a moment, he didn't look like a husband, or even a man. He looked like someone realizing he'd built his future on sand. Finally, he asked the question I knew was coming. Do you think she ever loved me? Or was it all calculation? I leaned back, studying him. That's not for me to answer. But I'll say this, the way a person treats their parents is the truest glimpse you'll ever get of their soul. If she could do this to me, do you really believe you're safe? The silence that followed was heavier than stone. He stood, clutching the folder under his arm, and looked at me with something between gratitude and despair. Thank you, he said. His voice cracked. I don't know what I'll do yet, but, thank you. I watched him walk out into the night, the papers pressed to his chest like a burden he wasn't sure he could carry. And I knew then, I didn't need to lift another finger. Because doubt, once planted, doesn't die. It grows. And it grows fastest in the dark. It didn't take long. Just 6 days after the wedding, I got the call, not from her, not from him, but from Emily again. The cousin who loved to talk. You won't believe this, she said, her voice buzzing with excitement. They're fighting in front of everyone at the hotel. He's saying he wants an annulment. She's screaming that you poisoned him against her. People are recording it. I didn't rush over. I didn't need to. The truth doesn't need an audience, it finds one all by itself. But later that night, as I sat in my chair with the TV on low and the folder of receipts tucked safely back in the cabinet, I heard a car screech outside. Tires on gravel. A door slam. She came in without knocking. My daughter. Her face streaked with tears, her voice raw from shouting. Are you happy now? She cried. You've destroyed me. He's gone. Everyone's laughing at me. You couldn't let me have one day, could you? Just one day. I stood slowly, meeting her eyes across the room. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the urge to shout, or to explain, or to beg for her love. I just felt finished. You destroyed yourself, I said. My voice was calm, steady. All I did was show the world what was already there. She shook her head, sobbing, clutching at her own arms like she was holding herself together. You'll die alone, she spat through tears. And you'll deserve it. I watched her storm out again, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. And I knew she was wrong. Because loneliness isn't dying alone, it's raising a child who looks at you not as a father, but as an obstacle. I sat back down in my chair, the house silent again. Outside, the night pressed close, heavy and still. Was I proud of what I'd done? Proud of the revenge, of the chaos I'd unleashed? No. Pride wasn't the right word. It was something colder, harder. A sense of balance. Justice, maybe. She had hung my picture at the entrance of her wedding with the words, "No entry." But now? Now she was the one standing outside, pounding on doors that would never open for her again. And that, I thought, was entry enough for me.